Hey y'all, today we are going to make some delicious broiled lobster tail, and I'm going to slide a little garlic butter on it, honey. It's about to be real good. Now I have 2 lobster tails that are 4 ounces each. These were previously frozen and I just thawed them overnight. I am going to start making these lobster tails by trying to get the meat away from the shell, which is very important. Now I'm going to press my finger under the bottom of the lobster just to try to wiggle away the meat a little bit. You don't have to cut the legs off if you don't want, so I tend to leave them on. But you do you, and I'm going to take some kitchen shears and cut down the back of the shell carefully. It is actually okay if you pierce the meat just a little bit while you're cutting through the shell. It actually gives the lobster a very pretty butterfly effect, but you really do not want to cut through the bottom of that lobster shell. That would really mess it up. Now I'm going to try to get the meat out. Now I don't know what it was about these lobsters, but they was trying to fight me not to come out of this shell. Okay, honey. So I had to bring in some recruits. All right, I had to bring in a little spoon, and I used it to scrape just under the shell. Okay, and it helped to detach the meat a little bit. This is not really the traditional way you remove a lobster, but it just works for me. Okay. Now, make sure you're not piercing the meat and that you are only wiggling under that shell really carefully. Now I'm going to crack the shell a little bit, making sure that I don't break sort of the top part, but I'm just sort of flexing it so that it will allow the meat to pop out easier. And then I'm going to flip over my lobster and I'm going to detach it from the bottom. I'm just going to stick my finger under here and wiggle it around on all sides so that it's easier for the lobster to pop out. Now, if you think your girl doing a good job, go ahead and give me a like. And y'all know I bought some expensive lobster for this video, so you know you got to go ahead and subscribe, honey. All right, and did y'all know lobster used to be cheap? It used to be peasant food, but for whatever reason, they made it expensive, just like oxtail. Okay, make oxtail cheap again. All right, now I'm going to pull it out of the shell and I'm going to place it on top. Now, those little membranes and things that are hanging down, I just snip them off with my kitchen scissors. I like to clean up the lobster a little bit. And I'm also going to rinse the lobster and the shell in the sink. I did that off camera just to make sure that it is super clean and I'm picking off any shell bits. Now that I have that prepped, I'm going to slice up 2 garlic cloves and I'm going to mince just a little bit of fresh parsley, most for decoration, trying to be cute, okay. And I have 3 tablespoons of melted butter. To this, I'm adding 1/4 teaspoon of Old Bay, 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder. I'm also adding a little bit of pepper, about 1/4 teaspoon as well, and a little bit of lemon pepper. You could also use fresh lemon if you have it, and I'm going to put in that minced garlic. I'm only going to put in a pinch of the parsley, that's just for cuteness, don't get crazy with it, all right? And mix it up well. Now, we're going to season our lobster tails. I'm just putting on a tad bit of Old Bay and the garlic powder and the lemon pepper again, just to make sure it's extra flavorful, nothing too heavy. Okay, remember there's also seasoning in the butter, and I'm using a spoon just to drip on some of the butter. I'm actually not touching the lobster when I do this because I want to use some of this garlic butter after the lobster is done, and if I touch the lobster and the butter raw, that's not going to be really nice. That's going to cross-contaminate it. So I'm just going to pour on the butter and then use a brush to season the front and the underside of that lobster. Okay, season both sides of your meat, all right, because you're going to eat both sides. And you don't need to add any extra powder seasoning. Just the seasonings from the butter is fine for the underside. Of course, I'm going to do the same thing to the other lobster, because we bougie and we want our food to taste right. And I even actually poured on a little bit extra butter. That butter helps to keep the lobster very moist. Lobster is a lean type of fish and it can get dry and rubbery real quick. And we don't want that, okay? Because y'all know you spend a lot of money for that lobster and we ain't trying to mess it up, okay? Now, just for a little color, I'm going to add on a little paprika. And I'm going to put this on a baking sheet. I am going to broil this lobster for about 4 to 5 minutes. You broil lobster for about 1 minute per ounce of each individual tail. So I have about 4 ounces of lobster per tail. I'm broiling it for about 4 minutes. Now my broiler has been preheating, so I can stick it right in. You also want to make sure that your oven rack is down so that your lobster is about 8 to 12 inches away from the broiler so it doesn't burn. I went in with a little more of that garlic butter, and then I had some beautiful lobster tails. Thank you for joining me today, and remember that the love of God is the most important love of all. Goodbye.